Stylebender. Go. These two terms aren't always used in the same sentence, but after the events of UFC 287 last night, I think it's time we start having a look at that conversation. For the middleweight division, of course. I want you to remember a time when you felt like a small but hungry dog. It's been said that when a man backs a hungry dog into a corner, it'll bite. For Israel Adesanya, the man that plagued him for years, chasing him around into that dark corner, was Brazil's very own Alex Pereira.
Pandemonium at Madison Square Garden. Disappointment for Adesanya.
It's worth noting that years before Alex Pereira even made his UFC debut, given that he had beaten him twice before, he would coach Izzy's future opponents on how to beat him. To be a fighter and a true champion, you have to beat what beats you. And if you continue to get beat, but eventually rise to become a victor, you become something more, a great, a legend. The makings of an all-time great can be boiled down to three things. Number one, how do you respond to critics, to adversity? Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira, the two men in the UFC that have ever successfully taken down the Stylebender. And how did Izzy respond?
Be one of the greatest KOs I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Commonly criticized for his somewhat lackluster title defenses, the Stylebender wasn't always a passive, patient striker. In fact, in his early defenses, and a couple spread out through the recent years, Adesanya has been responsible for some of the most brutal dogfights and perfectly timed knockouts in middleweight history. From his all-out war with Gastelum to his sharp and dominating first win over Whitaker, Israel Adesanya is no stranger to giving back what was dealt to him. So the events of last night shouldn't be a shock to anyone. Some people just seem to have a heightened sense of focus and flow when their back is against the wall. The UFC 287 is a classic display of what happens when you back a hungry dog into a corner. Number two, originality. The future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. Robert Greene's quote rings in an absolute truth, as we can see that Adesanya is no stranger to creative striking. We've seen strikers in this division put on a show with their flair and accuracy, but have we ever seen a fighter with such control over the style of the fight? Anybody can be a technical fighter, but technical fighters don't usually force you to adapt a whole new game plan mid-fight. We've seen how Izzy leaves his opponents confused, scratching their heads trying to figure out just how to beat a technically and stylistically more advanced opponent than them. The only other fighter who we can say with true confidence that has ever been able to break down fighters with such fashion in this division is Anderson Silva. However, during Silva's reign, the amount of striking talent and power wasn't quite as good as it is now, and Adesanya has basically cleared out everyone in his division, which leads me to the third and final key, dominance. Israel Adesanya's dominance is his best tool and his worst enemy. I'll go more in depth on that in a different video, but here's a rundown. Since Adesanya's electrifying debut in 2018, we've seen nothing but supremacy in his meteoric rise to legendary status. Adesanya was so far advanced from his opponents that he would eventually start fighting more passively and cruise to somewhat tame victories via decision. When you remain a king for so long, you get comfortable in your dominance. Complacent even. And with him being complacent with his reign came swift punishment as we saw the Stylebender brought back down to reality. Starving for a return to glory, thirsty for the feeling of redemption, UFC 287 Adesanya vs. Pereira 2 was a perfect example of a hungry dog doing what a hungry dog does.
I never call myself a goat, I leave that up to the people. Everybody can't go to the top, I had to lead some people. I'ma be forever scheming. Woke up, I thought I was dreaming. Watch my little boy play with toys. I just dropped a tear joy. Some shit that I feel for.
Y'all must have forgot. Y'all must have forgot.